Mornings had always been Emily's favorite time of day. There was a certain calm in the world, a stillness that seemed impossible once the sun fully rose and the chaos of life began. But this morning was different. She could feel it the moment she woke. The rhythm of her heartbeat was uneven, her hand subconsciously resting on her swollen belly, protective and instinctive. 7 months pregnant, she knew she had to be careful, especially while traveling. Yet something deeper than caution gnawed at her. A sense of dread she couldn't quite place. The airport was buzzing with life, as it always did. Travelers in various states of exhaustion and excitement moved like currents in a river of steel and glass. Emily clutched her handbag closer to her body, eyes scanning for anything that seemed out of place. She was used to vigilance, but today her instincts were sharper. Every glance from a passerby, every hurried footstep, set her on edge. She had packed lightly, the small suitcase, rolling beside her, wheels clicking in rhythm with her cautious steps. Her husband, Michael, had been excited about the trip, but he had work obligations and couldn't join her until the following week. Emily had insisted on making the journey alone, telling herself it was perfectly safe, though now, as she approached the security checkpoint, she felt the weight of solitude pressing down on her, and then she saw him. A German shepherd, large, muscular, trained, moving with a precision that only a working K9 could possess. His handler, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a uniform that seemed to command authority, walked him along the corridor with an ease that belied the tension in his eyes. Thor, his name was displayed on a small tag on his vest, scanned the crowd, with a discipline Emily found almost unnerving. But as she drew closer, something changed. Thor's ears perked sharply, his tail stiffened. He emitted a low, guttural growl, directed not at the crowd in general, but at her. Emily froze, the rolling suitcase stopped abruptly. Her pulse quickened, panic mingling with confusion. No one else seemed to notice. The handler looked down at Thor, then back at her, a flicker of uncertainty passing over his face before being replaced with professional composure. "Easy, Thor," he murmured, his voice calm but firm. The dog's gaze did not waver. Emily felt it like a physical pressure, the intensity of his eyes locking on her as if he could peer through layers of flesh and fabric directly into her core. She swallowed hard, gripping her stomach instinctively. He's just a dog," she whispered to herself, though the words sounded hollow. The security line moved forward, indifferent to the silent drama unfolding. Emily took a cautious step to the side, hoping the animal would lose interest, but Thor advanced, shifting his weight forward in a manner that suggested alertness, readiness. It wasn't aggression, not exactly. It was something more primal, more knowing. "Ma'am," the handler called, quickening his pace. "Step aside for a moment." Emily obeyed, heart hammering. She could feel the stares now, the curiosity of travelers who sensed tension but couldn't understand its source. Thor approached, nose twitching, eyes fixed, every muscle coiled with restrained energy. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She could feel every step he took echoing through her nerves. It was as if he was reading her very soul. "Is there a problem?" she asked, voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay calm. The handler shook his head, though his grip on the leash tightened. "Not with you, ma'am. He's just reacting." "Reacting? Reacting to what?" she asked, panic rising. Her voice was louder now, drawing attention. People glanced curiously, some whispering. Thor barked once, a sharp, precise sound that made Emily flinch. And then, in an instant, he lunged. Not at her in a hostile manner, but toward a small package she hadn't noticed, tucked under the stroller of a nearby child. The handler called him back, voice clipped and commanding. But Thor ignored the first verbal order, pausing only to growl, hackles raised, tail rigid. Emily's confusion turned to fear. She had done nothing wrong, yet the dog's intensity felt accusatory. as though he had sensed something invisible to human eyes. She moved to the side, heart racing. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but she was rooted, unable to pull away. "Sir," she said to the handler, pointing. Why is he reacting like this?" The man's eyes narrowed, studying her as carefully as Thor had. "Ma'am, I don't know. Sometimes they just sense things. I've seen it before, but never. Like this. Not directed so specifically." Emily felt a bead of sweat trickle down her temple. She reached for her stomach, as though that small motion could ground her in reality. But Thor's gaze didn't waver. He was fixated, aware, alert. And in that fixation, Emily realized something. Something was happening. Something beyond chance, beyond ordinary circumstance. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a reminder of mundane reality. She glanced at the screen. No new messages, just the time. 9:23, only 40 minutes until her flight. She exhaled slowly, trying to steady herself, but the tension had not left her chest. Thor's growl resumed, low and warning, a sound that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. The handler stepped closer, voice low. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside until we figure this out." Emily nodded automatically, feeling as if she had been caught in a current beyond her control. She stepped back, heart pounding, unable to shake the eerie feeling that something unseen had set the dog's instincts in motion. Passengers shuffled past, some oblivious, others curious. A few children stared wide-eyed, sensing the tension. Emily could feel their fear as her own. It was infectious, though she had no explanation for it, and then the most unnerving moment came. Thor's ears twitched, head tilting slightly, and for a brief, terrifying second, Emily swore he looked at her not as a stranger, but as someone responsible for something catastrophic. She shivered. What could a dog possibly sense that she could not? The handler, sensing the mounting panic, crouched slightly and spoke firmly. "Thor, easy." The dog's growl softened but did not disappear. Emily's hands trembled, fingers clenching the strap of her handbag. Somewhere in the distance, a child cried. Emily turned her head, hoping it was unrelated, but the air seemed charged with a silent alarm, invisible, palpable. And then a uniformed officer appeared. Officer Ramirez, tall, authoritative, with eyes that missed nothing, stepped forward. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice calm but commanding. His gaze swept from Emily to the dog to the handler. "This dog," the handler said, gesturing to Thor, "he's reacting unusually to her." Officer Ramirez's eyes flicked to Emily. "To her?" Emily swallowed. I don't know. I think he just started reacting when he saw me." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Do you have any items on you that might explain this? Luggage? Packages?" Emily's mind raced. She had nothing unusual, only her small carry-on, the diaper bag, and her purse. Nothing dangerous, nothing out of the ordinary. And yet Thor's intensity hadn't wavered. "Step aside," Officer Ramirez instructed, gesturing toward a quieter corner. "Let's assess this calmly." Emily obeyed, legs trembling, palms slick with sweat. She felt the eyes of dozens of strangers on her back. Thor stayed still now, sitting rigid, gaze unwavering. Emily felt as though the dog could see her thoughts, her fears, her unborn child's vulnerability, as if he had been tasked with a mission she could not understand. The world outside continued in its ordinary rhythm, oblivious to the silent alarm that had been triggered. And Emily knew, with a certainty that made her stomach twist, that her life, and perhaps her child's life, was about to change forever. Emily followed Officer Ramirez to the quieter corner of the terminal, her heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the growls and low whines of Thor behind them. She tried to steady herself, telling herself it was just a dog, just a professional canine reacting to a stranger, but her instincts screamed otherwise. There was something about the way Thor had stared at her, the intensity in his eyes, the almost human intelligence behind his gaze, that set her nerves on edge. The handler remained close, leash taut in his hands, voice low and steady as he whispered, "Commands." Thor's ears twitched, his body a living wire of tension. Emily noticed the dog's paw tapping against the polished floor in a measured rhythm, a drumbeat that seemed to echo her own anxiety. She couldn't help but shiver. Something was happening, and no one else seemed to see it. Officer Ramirez crossed, his arms studying Emily with a mixture of authority and caution. "Ma'am," he said, "we're going to need to search your belongings. Standard procedure." Emily nodded automatically, though her mind raced. She opened her carry-on and diaper bag, letting the officer inspect each item. Her small purse followed. Nothing. Just the usual: clothes, toiletries, travel documents, and the essentials for her unborn child. Every item was ordinary, mundane. Nothing that could justify Thor's reaction. The handler leaned close, voice low, almost confidential. "I've seen dogs react to scents, to nerves, to explosives, even to people with certain medical conditions. But nothing like this. It's focused, singular, and it's persistent." Emily's stomach tightened. "Medical condition?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes dogs can sense anomalies," the handler replied cautiously. "Abnormal heart rhythms, unusual stress hormones. But this is different. I can't explain it." Thor shifted slightly, still locked on Emily. A sudden sense of foreboding washed over her. She knew, deep in her bones, that whatever this was, it wasn't random. Something invisible had drawn his attention, and she was at the center of it. Officer Ramirez gestured toward a nearby bench. "Sit down for a moment. We'll get this figured out." Emily obeyed, though each movement felt weighed down by fear. She could feel her baby's small kicks against her abdomen, a reminder of the life she carried, fragile and innocent, in the midst of this unknown tension. Minutes passed, the terminal noise humming around them like the steady background of a storm yet to break. Emily's eyes never left Thor. The dog remained rigid, muscles coiled, eyes piercing. He wasn't just alert. He was searching, calculating, anticipating. It was the kind of awareness that humans could only imagine in science fiction. Then, from somewhere down the terminal, a faint smell reached Emily's senses. Smoke. At first, she thought it was a passing coffee cart, but her instincts told her otherwise. The air had a sharp, metallic tang beneath the aroma of morning pastries and warm bread. She inhaled sharply. Thor growled again, low and deliberate, the sound vibrating through his chest. Officer Ramirez frowned. "Do you smell something?" Emily nodded, voice tight. "Smoke. I think maybe electrical?" The handler's eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "That's what he's detecting," he murmured. "Thor is trained for explosives, but his reaction, it's not random. It's pointing, ma'am. He's pointing at a threat." Emily felt a cold sweat bead on her forehead. A threat. Here. In the middle of a crowded airport. Panic clawed at her chest, a visceral, unrelenting force. She could see it in the faces of passengers moving past, oblivious to the silent alarm. She realized how small and vulnerable she was, carrying a child, alone, with the world moving around her in indifferent rhythm. "Evacuate the area," Officer Ramirez ordered, voice calm but firm. "Now." Emily tried to follow, moving quickly toward the nearest exit, but her rolling suitcase caught on a corner of carpet. She stumbled, heart lurching. Thor barked sharply, a sound that sliced through the terminal like a knife, and the handler grabbed her arm to steady her. "Stay calm," he said, voice urgent. "Thor knows. He's sensing it. He's always right." The word right made Emily's stomach drop. What could a dog be so certain about that trained officers, technology, and years of experience might miss? Her mind flashed to news stories. She had read terror incidents where instinctive warnings had saved lives. Could this be one of those moments? The sound of another alarm, metallic, clipped, sounded from the terminal's PA system. Emergency lights flickered briefly, casting long shadows over the polished floors. People began to notice now, confusion rising into panic. Emily felt herself swept along by the crowd, yet Thor's eyes never left her. The handler tugged her to a side corridor, away from the main flow of passengers. "We need to isolate the threat," he said. "You stay here." Emily felt her heart hammering. "But what about everyone else?" "They're professionals," he said, though the tightness in his jaw betrayed a sliver of doubt. "We'll get them out safely. Right now, you are our priority." She nodded, though she couldn't stop trembling. The dog, Thor, sat just beyond the corridor, leash taut, muscles coiled. He let out another growl, low and steady, and Emily could swear he was communicating with her directly through his gaze. She felt the meaning behind it, unspoken yet undeniable. Danger. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Emily's senses sharpened. To every sound, the distant clatter of luggage, the quick footsteps of airport staff, the faint whir of an escalator. Her body was tense, ready to run, to protect her child, to survive. Every instinct screamed at her that time was critical. Then came the sound that made her stomach turn over completely. A hiss, metallic, followed by a sharp pop. Smoke curled from a small terminal kiosk, black against the fluorescent lights. Panic surged through the crowd. People screamed, ran in all directions, chaos erupting like a storm breaking loose. Thor leapt into action, handler in tow. Emily froze, every muscle locked, watching as the dog moved with lethal precision, positioning himself between the kiosk and the fleeing passengers. He barked, growled, but there was no aggression toward people, only toward the danger. Officer Ramirez grabbed a fire extinguisher and moved toward the source. Emily's hands trembled around her belly. She wanted to run forward, to help, but she was paralyzed by fear. Thor's gaze met hers once more. That single look, intense and knowing, seemed to calm her in a way nothing else could. He was telling her to trust him. The kiosk was quickly subdued. The smoke cleared. Emergency personnel rushed in, assessing the damage, extinguishing flames. No one was hurt. Emily exhaled shakily, relief mingled with lingering terror. She touched her stomach gently, feeling the small kick of her unborn child. A reminder that life continued, even in the face of danger. Thor sat obediently beside the handler, tongue lolling slightly, eyes still alert. Emily realized she was staring at him with a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had sensed the threat, acted decisively, and protected countless lives without hesitation. Officer Ramirez approached her cautiously. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Emily nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, thanks to him." She gestured toward Thor. He saved everyone." The handler smiled faintly, pride evident. "Thor does his job, and sometimes he chooses who he protects most closely." Emily shivered, understanding the depth of that statement. He had chosen her child. Somehow, instinctively, he had known. The terminal was quieting now. Passengers being ushered to safe zones, emergency lights fading. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that somehow Thor's reaction had unveiled something far more complex than a simple accident. Something unseen, threatening, and close. And she knew, with a chilling certainty, that her life, and the life of her child, had just crossed paths with a force she could not yet comprehend. Emily's legs felt like lead, as she followed the handler, and Thor into a quieter section of the terminal, away from the chaos that still hummed in the background. The smoke had dissipated, emergency lights flickered, and people whispered in hushed, anxious tones. Yet the air was still thick with tension, heavy with the knowledge that whatever Thor had sensed was far from ordinary. The dog remained vigilant, his body coiled, ears perked, eyes scanning every movement, every shadow. Emily's hand instinctively rested on her abdomen, feeling the tiny kicks of her unborn child. Each kick seemed to echo the rhythm of her pulse, fast, anxious, uncertain. She had survived, yes, but survival had a new meaning now. She was no longer just protecting herself. She was carrying someone whose life depended entirely on her. The handler crouched beside her, voice low and urgent. "Ma'am, Thor isn't reacting to random stimuli. He's trained for explosives, chemicals, even firearms. But his reaction isn't to a device. It's to a person, or the residue of one. Something in this terminal triggered a very specific response." Emily swallowed hard. "A person? Here?" "Yes," the handler said grimly. "And judging by his behavior, it's someone moving quickly, hiding in plain sight. We need to act carefully." Emily's eyes darted around the corridor. People passed by unaware. Staff hustled to secure areas, their faces pale, expressions tense. She wanted to shout a warning to pull everyone away, but she remembered the handler's earlier words, "Thor knows! Trust him!" Thor suddenly lunged forward, snapping the leash taut in the handler's hands. The growl that escaped his throat was low, guttural, almost human. Emily's stomach tightened. The dog had found it, the source of the danger. A man emerged from behind a row of vending machines. He wore a dark hoodie, the hood pulled low over his face, and gloves covered his hands. Something about his movements, hesitant, precise, made Emily's heart leap into her throat. Thor's growl intensified, reverberating through the corridor. "Stop!" Officer Ramirez barked, stepping in front of Emily. "Hands where I can see them!" The man froze, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended. Emily's eyes met Thor's, and she felt an unspoken communication pass between them. He was calm but ready, predictive, protective. He wasn't just a dog. He was a sentinel, a guardian. Slowly, the man raised his hands, revealing a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Thor didn't relax. He moved closer, body low, muscles tensed. Emily instinctively stepped back, clutching her abdomen. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Officer Ramirez gestured toward the man. "Open the bag." Reluctantly, the man complied. Inside was a strange assortment of chemicals and wiring, makeshift, dangerous, unstable. Emily's stomach churned. She had seen news reports of attacks like this, but to be this close, to feel the immediacy of it, was different, terrifying. The handler knelt beside Thor, murmuring reassurance as the dog's growls softened slightly. The man was subdued, handcuffed, and escorted by authorities, but the adrenaline coursing through Emily's veins didn't fade. She felt hollow, drained, yet intensely aware of the fragile life she carried. Thor turned to her then, eyes warm, almost human in their depth. Emily reached out to touch his head, feeling the taut muscles under his fur, the heartbeat of a living guardian who had saved her and countless others. She whispered his name almost reverently. You saved us, Thor." The dog nudged her gently. A silent affirmation, then sat obediently, still alert, but no longer tense. The handler smiled faintly. "He does his job," he said softly, "and sometimes he chooses who to protect most fiercely. Today, he chose you." Emily felt tears prick her eyes, relief, gratitude, awe, and a profound sense of connection to this extraordinary creature. Her fear slowly ebbed, replaced by a deep, overwhelming respect. Life was fragile, she realized, but it also had allies in unexpected forms. Loyalty, instinct, courage, embodied in a four-legged sentinel named Thor. As the authorities took statements, cleared the terminal, and began the tedious process of investigation, Emily's mind kept returning to Fielding. If he had been here, he would have marveled at the precision, the silent choreography of courage and instinct. He would have understood, in a way Emily couldn't yet articulate, the delicate architecture of protection, of unseen guardians shaping outcomes without anyone noticing. Sitting in the corner with her tea now, cooled but comforting, Emily let herself breathe deeply. Her child kicked again, reminding her that life persisted even in the face of terror. The memory of Thor's unwavering focus, the handler's steady professionalism, and her own survival instincts mingled into a singular, sharp clarity. She was alive, and she was responsible for the life of another. Later, back in the quiet of her home, Emily sat on the veranda, looking out at the city skyline as the sun dipped below the horizon. Thor had stayed by her side throughout the ride home, eyes never leaving hers. The dog's presence was a constant reassurance, a tangible reminder of the day's events. She poured a cup of tea, still trembling slightly, but a sense of peace began to settle over her. She thought of her husband, Fielding, and the way he had always designed spaces to protect and nurture life. Today, she realized, that principle had extended beyond architecture. Instinct, loyalty, and courage had built invisible walls around her and her child, and those walls had held. Emily's phone buzzed. It was a message from Baxter, asking if she was home, if she was all right. She didn't answer immediately. She looked down at Thor, sitting faithfully at her feet, and smiled softly. One day she would explain everything to Baxter. But for now, she let herself feel gratitude, relief, and a quiet awe at the loyalty and courage she had witnessed. The night sky darkened, stars beginning to peek through, and Emily felt a profound stillness, a sense that, despite the danger, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Thor rested his head on her lap, eyes half closed but alert, a guardian in every sense. She stroked his fur gently, feeling the strength and warmth radiate into her own body, and whispered softly, "Thank you, my friend. You saved more than just lives today." And for the first time since that terrifying morning, Emily allowed herself to truly exhale, knowing that while the world was unpredictable, some forces, loyalty, courage, love, were steadfast and enduring. The night was calm. The terminal had returned to order. Lives had been spared, and Emily, with Thor at her side, knew she could face whatever came next. The morning after the terminal incident, Emily awoke to a silence heavier than any she had known. The house felt different, as though it had absorbed the tension of the previous day and was now holding its breath with her. Thor padded quietly to the bedroom door, waiting for her to rise. His dark eyes, alert yet calm, met hers with an unspoken understanding. Emily wrapped herself in a soft shawl and followed him to the kitchen, where sunlight streamed through the windows, painting the walls in warm golds and soft shadows. The air smelled faintly of the tea she had left steeping the night before, mingling with the delicate scent of flowers from the veranda. It was domestic tranquility, deceptively normal after the chaos of yesterday. Sitting at the table with a mug of steaming Darjeeling, she traced her fingers along the edges of the old London tea set, remembering the countless mornings she had shared with Fielding. Her mind wandered back to his quiet laughter, his way of turning ordinary routines into rituals of love and care. Now she carried that memory like a shield, a reminder that life, even when fragile, was precious. The phone rang again. Emily's heart skipped a beat, not out of fear this time, but anticipation. It was Baxter. She answered, and his voice was cautious, softer than usual. "Mom," I just wanted to make sure you're okay after yesterday. I'm fine, she said, though her voice carried the tremor of lingering adrenaline. Thor and I are resting now. We're both well. I wanted to apologize, Baxter continued, hesitant. I shouldn't have pushed about the house the way I did. Seeing you in danger yesterday, it made me realize some things are more important than plans or apartments. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the tension in her chest ease slightly. Baxter? It's all right. We all have our moments of worry and control. What matters is that we're here, alive. They spoke for a few more minutes, their conversation, gentle, careful, bridging the gap that had grown between them over the years. Emily felt a renewed sense of connection to her son, a fragile but hopeful thread that reminded her she wasn't alone in facing the future. After the call, Emily stepped onto the veranda with Thor at her side. The city stretched below her, quiet, in the early morning haze. She inhaled deeply, savoring the calm before the bustle of the day. Her thoughts drifted again to Fielding. He would have loved Thor, she realized, understanding instinct and loyalty as he did. This dog, this guardian, had saved more than lives. It had restored a sense of security, a reassurance that courage and love could exist in forms beyond human comprehension. The rest of the day was spent carefully inspecting the house. Emily moved through each room, noticing details she had overlooked in her grief. The slight crack in the study window, the subtle warp of the kitchen floorboards, the way sunlight now struck the old dining table differently than it had years ago. She felt a renewed responsibility toward the home, not just as a structure of wood and stone, but as a vessel of memory, a repository of life and love. Thor followed her silently, a constant presence, his senses attuned to everything she might miss. Occasionally, he would pause and tilt his head, as though reminding her that vigilance was still necessary, that shadows could hide even when the day seemed safe. Later, a knock at the door startled her. Thor growled lowly, body tense, ears forward. Emily opened the door cautiously to find Detective Ramirez standing there, a folder clutched in one hand, expression serious. "Emily," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We've completed our preliminary investigation, but there's something you need to know. The man we apprehended yesterday? He was part of a larger network, and we believe there may be more threats in the area." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had survived yesterday, but the revelation that danger still lingered sent a chill down her spine. "More threats," she whispered. "Yes," Ramirez confirmed, "and we're asking you to remain cautious. We'd also like Thor and you to cooperate further if anything else arises. Your insight yesterday was invaluable. And the dog? He's extraordinary." Emily nodded, determination settling in her chest. She felt a surge of protectiveness not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her, for the home she had spent decades building, and for the fragile sense of family she was reclaiming with Baxter. She looked down at Thor, and he met. Her gaze, eyes shining with silent promise. They were ready, together. As night fell, Emily lit the lamps throughout the house, casting pools of warm light across the polished floors and walls lined with memories. She moved slowly, savoring the small comforts. The softness of her chair by the fire, the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the faint scent of flowers drifting from the veranda. In the bedroom, she paused at Fielding's old desk, running her fingers over the worn leather and scattered blueprints. Memories flooded back, the planning, the laughter, the late nights discussing dreams and futures. She felt a pang of longing, but also a deep sense of gratitude. Fielding had built more than a house. He had built resilience, and it was this resilience that now pulsed quietly in her veins. Emily sat by the window, Thor at her feet, watching the city lights shimmer through the darkness. Her phone buzzed again, but this time she let it wait. She had survived danger, faced fear, and discovered new strength. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, perhaps even more threats, but tonight she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. Thor rested his head on her knee, warm and solid. Emily stroked his fur, feeling the calm spread through her body. She whispered softly, "Thank you, my friend, for everything." The night deepened. Outside, the world was quiet, yet she knew it was alive with possibilities and perils alike. But within these walls, filled with memories, vigilance, and love, Emily felt a profound truth. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. And with Thor at her side, and her family still tethered to her heart, she knew she could face whatever darkness came next. The stars blinked faintly through the window, a reminder that light persisted even in the vastest darkness. Emily closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and allowed herself to sink into the night, knowing that dawn would bring new challenges, new hope, and a chance to protect all she held dear. And as Thor shifted slightly, resting closer to her, Emily realized that they were not alone in their vigilance. Together they were a quiet, unwavering force against whatever shadows lingered, ready to face the unknown with courage, loyalty, and unwavering determination. The morning sunlight fell unevenly across the Victorian mansion, brushing the polished floors with streaks of gold and shadow. Emily moved quietly, still wrapped in her soft shawl, as if the day itself demanded caution. Thor followed her closely, pads silent against the wooden floors, his eyes alert for even the smallest sign of danger. The events of the previous days had left a lingering unease, a shadow that clung to the walls of the house. Emily could feel it in every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows. She began her routine with meticulous care, making tea in the kitchen, noting the subtle warmth of the sunlight on the countertops. The house was alive with memory. Every corner, every piece of furniture held echoes of Fielding, of Baxter, of laughter and quiet evenings. It was comforting, but also a reminder that this safety was fragile, easily disrupted by forces outside. Her control. Thor barked suddenly, a sharp, low sound that made Emily spin around. At the doorway stood Detective Ramirez, looking grim, his coat damp from the early morning drizzle. "Emily," he said without preamble, "I need you to come with me. There's been another incident. I think the threats are escalating." Emily's stomach nodded, a mix of fear and determination rising in her chest. "Another incident?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tightness in her throat. "Yes," Ramirez confirmed. "Someone has been following Baxter and Rosamond. They were unaware, but the pattern is clear. The network we suspected yesterday is more organized than we realized. They're watching, waiting for an opening." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. She looked at Thor, whose dark eyes mirrored her own concern. "I understand. What do I need to do?" "Stay vigilant," Ramirez said, "and trust your instincts. Thor will be your first line of defense, but you must be careful. We'll provide support, but the house is your sanctuary. It's also the first line of observation." Emily nodded, a surge of resolve settling over her. She had faced fear before, but this was different. This wasn't just about protection. It was about reclaiming control, asserting her presence against those who sought to intrude on her life. The day stretched on, heavy with anticipation. Emily moved through the house, examining every entry point, noting minor repairs and reinforcing locks where she could. Thor never left her side, ears constantly pricked, nose twitching as he sniffed the air for any sign of intrusion. Emily felt a growing connection with him, a silent acknowledgement that they were partners in this delicate balance between safety and threat. By afternoon, Baxter and Rosamond arrived, the tension palpable the moment the door closed behind them. Baxter's usual brisk demeanor was tempered with visible concern, and Rosamond's carefully rehearsed smile faltered ever so slightly. Emily felt a flicker of satisfaction. It was subtle, but she noticed that the facade had cracks. They were human after all, vulnerable despite their polished exteriors. "Mom," Baxter began, voice unsteady, "we received a warning. Someone is monitoring us, and possibly you. The police think it's linked to the network yesterday. You have to be careful." Emily took a deep breath, allowing calm to replace fear. "I understand, Baxter. We'll be cautious, but hiding never solved anything, did it? Thor and I are prepared." Rosamond wrinkled her nose, an expression that was more habitual than emotional, but Emily recognized the tension beneath. She had seen it before, the juxtaposition of control and worry. "We just want you safe, Yvonne," Rosamond said quietly. "It's overwhelming to think about this." Emily offered a small smile. "Safety comes from awareness, not fear. I'll protect myself, the house, and this family, but we must be alert, yes, and careful." After a tense lunch, they moved to the veranda, the afternoon sun falling in muted waves across the garden. The flowers swayed slightly in the breeze, and Emily realized that life continued, even amidst uncertainty. She noticed the way Baxter's jaw tightened, the subtle shift in Rosamond's posture, and she understood. They were all part of this ongoing tension, each navigating fear in their own way. As dusk approached, Emily walked through the house, checking locks and windows, adjusting, lighting to create both visibility and comfort. Thor followed, every sense attuned to the environment, his presence a constant reassurance. She paused by Fielding's old study, gazing at the blueprints and sketches scattered across the desk. Memories of Fielding's quiet wisdom filled her chest, a steadying, guiding force that seemed to whisper, "You are stronger than you realize." Suddenly, Thor's ears pricked. He let out a low growl, a sound that made Emily freeze. She followed his gaze to the garden, where a shadow shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. Step by step, she moved closer. Thor at her, side, ready for anything. From behind the hedge, a figure emerged. A man, cloaked in a dark coat, his face obscured. Emily felt a surge of fear, quickly tempered by determination. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice firm. The man hesitated, then lifted a hand slightly, a gesture of surrender. I'm not here to harm," he said cautiously. "I have information about the network. They're targeting more than you know." Emily's brow furrowed. She studied him, measuring the tension in his stance, the honesty, or deception, in his eyes. Thor growled softly, and Emily felt the gravity of the moment. She could not allow herself to be caught off guard, not now, not after everything. "Talk," she said, keeping her voice low but commanding. "Every detail you know. Lives may depend on it." The man nodded, stepping closer. "They've been watching Baxter and Rosamond for weeks. They know schedules, routines. The house, you." Emily's pulse quickened, but she remained composed. "How do you know this? Why should I trust you?" "Because I lost someone to them," he replied quietly, almost a whisper. "I've been trying to stop them ever since." Emily considered, his words weighing the danger and the opportunity. Thor's steady presence reminded her that fear could be controlled, that vigilance could turn into power. "Very well," she said. "Tell me everything. But if there's any deception—" She let her hand fall slightly toward the fireplace poker, a subtle reminder that she was ready for any outcome. The man swallowed, then began recounting everything he knew, the network's hierarchy, methods, and recent activity. Emily listened intently, her mind mapping strategies, noting potential weaknesses. Thor shifted beside her, eyes never leaving the stranger, body coiled like a spring, ready to act. Hours passed as they spoke, the sun sinking below the horizon, casting long shadows across the veranda. Emily felt a strange sense of calm amidst the tension, a clarity that came from understanding the scope of the threat. She was not powerless. She had Thor, her instincts, and the house itself, a fortress shaped by decades of care, vigilance, and love. Finally, the man finished. Emily stood, her figure tall in the fading light, eyes burning with resolve. "We have work to do," she said, "and we will do it carefully, for the house, for our family, for every life that might be in danger if we fail." Thor barked once, sharply as if agreeing with her silent declaration. Emily smiled briefly at him, a shared understanding passing between them. They would face whatever came next together, unflinching, resolute, unafraid of the shadows that lingered outside their walls. As night fell fully over Neepville, Emily moved through the house, checking every lock, confirming every safety measure. She lit lamps strategically, casting light into corners and shadows, creating both comfort and vigilance. Outside, the city pulsed quietly, unaware of the drama unfolding within one particular Victorian mansion. Emily paused on the veranda, looking up at the stars that blinked faintly through the night sky. Thor settled at her feet, head resting against her ankles. In that moment, she understood something profound. Courage isn't about the absence of fear, but the conscious decision to act in spite of it. And with Thor by her side and her family tethered to her heart, she would not falter.